So, this is what most of you expected, but I know you had an issue with it immediately. So tell me what your issue is with TCU dropping 3-6 and the Buckeyes getting in the field.
My issue is the conversation of 3, 5, and 6. 5 days ago, you told me that TCU is the number 3 team in the country, and I understand we looked at them and their body work at that moment. They've gone from 3 to 6.
And they won by 52.
I agree. Yeah. And they go in. Trayvon Boykin has his best game. Their defense scored another touchdown. They did nothing in this weekend to say that they weren't the 3rd best team in the country. I understand we start fresh, but it was just 5 days ago. But vote again, and somebody flipped enough votes in 11, 12 people flipped to take a team from 3 to 6. I don't get that argument.
I totally understand what you're saying. And Kirk, as you look at this, TCU was the team in this mix that didn't have a chance to add to its resume because of the schedule. They played a 2-win Iowa State team. The other teams you're talking about did. Baylor had a big game to play. Ohio State certainly had a huge game to play. Even Florida State. They all had opportunities to add to the resume, something that TCU didn't, so the holding pattern wasn't enough for the Horned Frogs.
The committee was waiting until all the games were played and all the champions were crowned to then get to this point. And you could really look at TCU and say, how'd they go from 3 to 6? I think this is a lesson for all of us about the future of this committee. This is not the AP poll. This is not hold serve. You're at number 3, and if you win, you're going to stay at number 3. They evaluated everything. Head-to-head came into play eventually because Baylor beat Kansas State. The resume got close enough. Baylor went ahead of TCU in the committee's eyes, and they couldn't do that until they got that win over Kansas State, and all the games were played. So it isn't so much to me that what did TCU struggle with, what did they not do. It's what Baylor did and what Ohio State did to take them by TCU, and that's why they dropped this spot.
Can I ask you a question here? And we've heard eye test, and we've heard how these teams look and how we evaluate them. I understand the metrics. I'm not a stats guy. I'm not a metrics guy. When I study these teams, and I need you to tell me that when you come out with these rankings mean that at that moment you believe that this team is better than the team behind them. The metrics part, when I watch the film, nothing changed. If I believed that TCU, when I watched them play, was at number 3, better than 4, 5, and 6, what they did this weekend didn't change that. I understand the resume changes.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, though.
I need a little bit of, I watched them play.
But they're also, I think that comes into it. And Jeff Long's talked about the eye test, but I also think they're using all these different metrics. And they've talked about it that some metrics mean more than others. So I think Baylor now, Kansas State, TCU beat Kansas State. Baylor beat Kansas State. That's complete. So the resumes become close.
When you watch film, watch film and decide who you think is the better team, are you watching the game, or are you slide that to the side, what they actually did, what they actually looked like, and what I believe the matchup would be, and say, well, I'll take the matchup.
I think it's a combination.
That's what you do.
That's a combination of all of it.
It's the entire picture.
You've been a body of work guy. I mean,
but also, and if you're looking at eye test, then you'd have the anti-Florida State people who would say, well, where have I seen this team that deserves in the spot? So I think it's everything. You have to look at a compilation of everything. Use some of the metrics, use some of the eye test, you break down the film, and you look at who they've beaten, who have they lost to, and you come together, that joint conversation in that room that the committee has been doing, and you come up with your best choice. Like you said, there is no best correct answer.
You look at the numbers and the close calls, and I'm not sure anybody said it better than what Lou Holtz said last night on College Football Final. He said, I have Florida State in the 4, but I don't think they're one of the 4 best, but that 0 in the loss column gets them in.
And that's the sole reason I had them at 1, because I felt like they earned the right to have the number 1 spot. Ultimately, if you're Jimbo Fisher, you just want a spot in the 4. You want a chance to play, because the bottom line is if they have their A game, they can play with anybody in the country.
No
but if you get their C game,
we haven't seen their A game consistently.